that emotion.
Around the outside. It's time to bring the action.
Welcome to SMX Insider. We are the Jasons, your insiders, Jason Wygant, Jason Thomas. We just rolled through the Geico Motorcycle High Point National JT, and here's what I love about the sport. When it's so dynamic, when you look at the whole Supercross and Motocross schedule together, these last two tracks have been a completely different type of challenge than what a Supercross would be or the first two Motocross rounds. And the atmosphere, when you go east, it is something different, especially when you throw Ken Roczen leading laps by surprise in the mix. It's just different, rabid, raw. It's cool that we get all these different atmospheres at so many different races.
Yeah, and this was, as you mentioned, the first time going east, and it is different. I don't know what it is, if it's, summer has finally arrived and everybody's ready to get outside or what, but it's palpable. The atmosphere is just electric when you get to these races, and yeah, I'm here for it. I think we have some great ones coming up, but High Point was a noticeable improvement of just over the overall atmosphere. People are excited to be there.
Yeah, Redbud and Southwick next two are not going to be slouched either. What did you say? You heard the crowd chanting Kenny for 5 straight minutes or something like that?
Yeah, we have this break where I'm waiting and we're going through television commercials and these things, and it's that preparation. You're talking about the highlights with Ricky this weekend, and there's this waiting period, and they started chanting Kenny, and I'm like, ooh, there's a long time before Kenny's coming from around the other side to these people, and I'm like, you guys are going to get tired. They just kept going. Like, it was just this endless chant for Ken Roczen, and it's awesome. Nobody really expected him to be there until a few days before the race, and all those people, I'm sure, were planning to go anyway, so what a pleasant surprise for all those
Yeah,
fans.
and it's not just Roczen, whether it was the Team Fried chants for Anderson a couple years ago, the Jett Lawrence poster contest a few years ago. They've always got something when we go east. It's going to be fun, but let's get into the racing, and for that, we're going to add Ricky Carmichael here with this week's big interview. Time for our big interview. Jason Wygant, Jason Thomas. Now we got the GOAT, Ricky Carmichael here. This is from High Point, and we're going after a weekend off to Redbud. I feel like this 250 story has been so similar all year, RC, where Hunter Lawrence, I'm calling him the executioner. He executes. He gets it done. Do you still feel other riders, now that he's won 4 in a row, still would feel, oh, no, I can still get one of these going into the next round?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. I do believe that. Just the talent is there. The speed is there. So it's a lot of fun to watch. Myself personally, when I'm not at the races, that's what I look forward to. Like, okay, who's going to be able to react this weekend? And it makes it fun.
But, Hunter, I'm going to ask you this. He's been through so much. Europe, bad seasons of injuries and all that. Is that part of the reason we're seeing him? He manages these days so much better than the rest of the guys who seem to make the critical error that he doesn't.
Well, I talked about this in Supercross once in a while, that I really feel like he's been able to take everything that he's learned the last couple of years, and now you're seeing the culmination of that. He's been able to execute everything that he has learned, what to do right, what to do wrong. He knows the ropes, the dieting. I think he was having diet problems or whatever that was, but now everything is right. The train is tracking forward, and I think we're going to see a lot of this from him for a long time.
Yep. All right. But the other 250 guys got to feel like they have a shot. Now, the 450 had been a little bit more obvious because Jett had been in complete control, but we did see some things change here, at least today.
Yeah, and I think it was a couple of things at work here. I don't think Jett had his best day. I haven't seen him crash that many times. I mean, it was multiple crashes in qualifying practice. He even mentioned just the uncomfort that he felt all day. They were kind of searching on the motorcycle, which he hasn't been doing at all. And I think this track also works really well for Ken Roczen, right? So there was a lot of dynamics all kind of converging here today. Kenny came in with nothing to lose, no pressure. He did, if you crash, who cares? He just wanted to have fun. And there's something to be said for that. You can really ride looser. You can really be aggressive. When everybody else has all these things in the back of their mind, Kenny can come in and be like, yeah, this is my one weekend to go for it. So there was a lot there, but at the end of the day, I still think there's something to be said for Jett making it happen, right? It could have very easily in that second moto just settled and taken a second or a third, and he's like, no, you know what? I'm only 10 seconds down. I can figure this out, and I can get back to the front, and that's what he did.
We talked about it before we went on air. It was another situation and another stepping stone towards his progression in the Premier class. And he's going to he'll make mistakes. There's no doubt about it, as there's more challengers, but he's just that good. He really is.
And I'll give you credit. You said it during Supercross that, he could end up being the best, one of the best that's ever done it. Like, 100%. He has that ceiling and that level of talent. And I agree with you. I don't think we're really seeing the best of what's to come from Jett. I think he's going to keep seeing these challenges, have to elevate his game. And he's one of the few that has the talent to continue to elevate. Some people just end up running out of talent, and that's all they have.
That's their ceiling.
Jett's ceiling is really high, and I don't know where it is, to be honest.
Okay, but Roczen challenging him here, and he's not going to do every race. Do you think if you're Chase Sexton, for example, on the sidelines, we don't know what the future is for Eli Tomac, does that encourage them a little bit to say, okay, it wasn't like he walked Kenny by a minute in each moto?
I mean, if they're trying to think positively, of course, right? I mean, they're probably thinking at home, well, I know I'm better than Kenny in this situation, and, you know, I know I'm better than this guy in that situation, and you have to keep a positive mindset. None of these guys that you just mentioned, Chase Sexton, Eli Tomac, Ken Roczen, all of the guys, they're not just going to concede to the guy. You know, they're going to give him everything that they have, and I don't know if I've had this conversation with you, but I feel like Jett is here, okay? And the level that the other guys are going to come up, they're going to close that gap. So I feel like, yes, we haven't seen Jett's ceiling, but I feel the other guys have more area to improve compared to what Jett does. I think working mistakes and just learning is what Jett's biggest challenge is going to be, not necessarily actually going faster.
All right, last thing, we're going to Redbud.
Yes.
Let's just talk about that atmosphere first.
It's the best race on the series. I mean, you go back to last year, not only the race in general, but the Motocross of Nations, it's epic. It's an epic vibe. It's, you know, July 4th weekend. I mean, it's a big party, let's face it.
It is.
I won't be there partying. I'll be somewhere else partying, but I will be tuned into you guys.
Okay.
But yeah, there's so much to look forward to. Like when I think of Redbud, I'm like, all right, who's going to challenge Jett? Okay, and then I go to the 250s. Like, who are those guys from the 6th to 13th range that are going to improve in the 250? That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, and we'll see if anyone can finally end this for the Lawrence brothers. Will they go halfway through the season without having lost a race? We'll see. Tune in at Redbud after weekend off. Thanks, RC.
Yep, thank you for having me. It was fun. Good job to you guys today. And we'll see you on the tube at Redbud.
Yeah, we're going to get you at Southwick. That'll be fun.
There you go.
Yep. Okay, 30-second board time, some hot topics in the sport. But also we like to highlight things that aren't as obvious, like this. Opening ceremonies. Haiden Deegan graduates from high school thanks to the on-track school. And I know that seems kind of weird because for most of us graduating high school, even you, JT, you did graduate regular high school, public high school while racing, right?
I did, yeah. I actually went to university for a couple of years.
But look, times have changed. Every parent in every sport has become much more specific. And this is going to be a rule. You're going to have the graduation, the degree to race the 450 class in the future of this sport. So this is the way it's going. And look, we all know Haiden Deegan is probably going to do well in life with or without the education. This is cool that they decided to do this. And then when you put it on display, it's letting all the other riders who may not make it in the sport and letting them know this is still important, even if you're one of the brightest shining stars in the sport.
Yeah, this is awesome. And he also joins the graduating class of Ricky Carmichael, who went this same route, 25 years later or so. But it is a really cool thing. And the MX Sports Mr. Do-It-All, Tim Cotter, was there to walk Hayden down the aisle and present him with the diploma. So it was just a really good, feel-good moment. But I think what kind of caught me off guard is Hayden's thinking about this first moto and all the things that go into the sport and the pressure, and he's trying to be locked in. And they're like, hey, we're going to also have you go graduate high school right before you have to go line up as well. So it was this converging of all these emotions. But in the end, it's awesome. I hope that more people will follow this path, because what I always tell people is, great, chase your dreams of racing motocross, but don't mortgage your future and the opportunities past racing just to accomplish what you want to do in the racing world as well.
Yeah, and I think that's Hayden being a bit of a role model. Again, with everything they've got going on, even if the racing doesn't work out, he'll probably be fine. But this is inspiring other riders to say, if he does it, well, then I definitely need to do it. Similar with the morals here, this is interesting from practice. So Ryder DeFrancesco goes down. Another rookie rider, Caden Broswell, who probably would like to beat him on the weekend, is the only person that's able to help him get back up.
Yeah, this was awesome. This was shades of Mike McDade and Will Hahn years ago, where you see someone down, they're stuck, they can't get up, there are no flaggers that have arrived yet, and they need help. And what I always thought about was, you could be being burnt by an exhaust pipe. Like, you don't really know the level of urgency here. So it's not only do you want to help them and be a nice guy, but it could also be some sort of, health or emergency here where this person's in a lot of pain. So good on Caden Braswell. It made me cheer for him. I put him on my fantasy team simply because of this move, and it makes it really easy to cheer for a guy like that.
The penalty, JT, you broke this news with Hunter Lawrence here after the race day was over.
Yeah, I got tipped off during the 450 moto, and of course, you never want to report news that you haven't verified, especially something as significant as championship points being taken away from the leader. So I went in and did some homework and talked to people that I could trust, that I know hadn't really talked to each other about this. And once I felt secure with verification of this, we reported it right after the 450 podium. And it's unfortunate for Hunter. I know he was unhappy about it. He was pretty vocal about that in the press conference. Yes, it's a bummer, but if you're looking for a silver lining, he still does have a commanding points lead leading High Point.
Yeah, the 7-point penalty will apply, we believe, both SuperMotocross World Championship and this 250 motocross title, of which both he's in good position anyway, but every rider wants every point they can get. And what does help his title defense or attempt to win this title, unfortunately, some bad news from Justin Cooper, who was really starting to put things together until this crash here.
Yeah, that was a bummer. I missed it. I had my back turned, and I heard the crowd before I saw the crash or the any of the consequences of the crash. And then, guys crash quite often in practice, and you don't really think much of it. These guys are so tough, and they've gone through so much over the course of their career. But watching him on camera, I knew something was immediately wrong, because I always gauge how urgent they are to go try to find their motorcycle, right? Are their thoughts immediately, I need to get back on my bike and back into this qualifying session, or are they completely disassociated from that? And I saw him not wanting to move. He didn't really want to do a lot. So I'm like, that's typically a bad sign. Unfortunately, things got worse after he arrived back at his team hauler. They ended up taking him to the hospital, because when I saw him riding on the back of his motorcycle going back to the truck, I'm like, he'll be okay. We should see him in Moto 1 here in a couple hours. But things got worse. He ended up going to the hospital and then had to stay overnight at the hospital. And looking at some of the images he posted on his Instagram, that was a pretty heavy hit. So let's hope for the best for Justin. Let's hope we get him back sooner rather than later. But both to his championship and SuperMotocross World Championship playoff aspirations, this was a pretty heavy hit.
Yeah. So he did post on Sunday night on Instagram that he's doing better now, but it was a scary 24 hours. So get well soon to Justin Cooper. We don't know if we'll get him back at Redbud or not, but in this case, it's a whole lot more serious than just points. But he did lose a ton of them there. And when you look at these points, this is the SMX points when we combine Supercross and Motocross. And here's why the 7-point penalty for Hunter in this standing doesn't matter too much. He's got like an 80-point lead. But I love the battle here you got between RJ Hampshire and Haiden Deegan, who I feel in some ways are one and the same. Their style, and then a High Point, it was perfect. They battled for a Moto win, all out on the last lap of Moto 1. That's what both of these guys are all about.
Yeah, and you think about their experience of racing each other, it's new. This is a new dynamic. Of course, they race each other at a couple of the showdown events, but you look at Haiden Deegan, he's 17 years old, and you look at RJ Hampshire, he's pushing 30 at this point, and so wildly different, perspectives on racing and the things that they've been through and just the trajectory of their career from here. But then the other side of that is they're both racing and battling each other for similar championships. So how do you break all that down and how do you square all that? I don't know, but I can tell you when they mix, it builds incredible racing. That last lap pass by RJ was unbelievable. And I can tell you, having stood there when Hayden pulled off the track, he was a mix of devastated and really, really angry. You see just how competitive these guys are, because it was an incredible race. Everybody's cheering, but Hayden didn't care about cheering. He was nothing but angry and disappointed coming in out of that first moto.
Remember, it was a points reset. So if it ended like this, Hunter would not have an 80-point lead over Hampshire and Deegan. He would have a 3 or 5-point lead over second and then third. So they still have a shot at it, even if they don't get it outdoors, to make it happen. That's going to be fun to watch them go for it. We'll go to our 450 topics. Obviously, at the top is Ken Roczen. It was just cool that Kenny decided to do this. He said it was Father's Day weekend. He asked his son, Griffin, who's 2 years old, what do you want to do? Boat or race? Griffin said race. I didn't know Kenny would be this good. This is like maybe even better than Kenny was last year. And he's never even raced this bike in motocross. This was a spectacular performance.
It was. And first off, let me say, I hope this is the extent of their decision-making that they allow Griffin to do. Like, don't make investment decisions or any of those. Don't let Griffin decide those things. He's too young. He doesn't have the experience or perspective yet. Of course, kidding, but it was awesome all the way around to see him there, to see him perform at that level on Father's Day weekend. You know, he has a 2-year-old. His wife Courtney's pregnant with their second child, so you have all the storylines there. It was such a feel-good moment, and he brought so much to the racing dynamic. We really hadn't seen anybody challenge Jett since Chase Sexton left the series, and in comes Ken Roczen on a Suzuki for the first time racing that motorcycle outdoors last minute, and he gives us some of the best battling of the series thus far. So I hope he comes back for more. I think that's the plan. It sounds like he had a great time and wants to jump back in the series here and there. But yeah, I do nothing but welcome it.
And as if that's not enough, look, if you tell the fans you're going to get Roczen leading laps and pushing Jett, that's satisfactory. As a bonus, we got a retro Adam Cianciarulo ride, and then you have Roczen and Cianciarulo battling for the lead. Look, we thought we were going to get that over a 10-year span every week. It's really not materialized for either of them as much as we thought. But for a brief moment there, that second moto, that was electric.
It was, and Adam really put in a vintage ride. We haven't seen that level from him in motocross for quite a while. And I have to wonder if some of the, he's been really experimenting with therapies and trying outside the box things with his arms to try to get more feeling and feel better weight in the motos. And I wonder if some of that is starting to pay off. That's something I want to dive into in the coming weeks. Is like, hey, are you noticing? Is that a part of this? Because he's really struggled with this over the last couple of years. Speaking with him before the Supercross season started, he was in a really tough spot with that. He didn't know what level his arms would let him perform at. And to see him go down and really put in elite level lap times and flash that speed that has really been Adam Cianciarulo's calling card over the course of his career was a really positive sign.
Yeah, he actually said more so, I think he's learning to ride around it. It's a grip strength problem, and he's hoping that the grip strength gets better, but he is changing his approach on the motorcycle and his race strategy. Honestly, probably riding a little bit more like Jett Lawrence, who deceives us at all times. You can never tell how hard he's trying. And that was really the case over the weekend. We talked about it already with Carmichael. But look, we can talk about Roczen, Cianciarulo, maybe Jett not being at his best. He's still 8-0. It's an unbelievable start to a 450 career.
Yeah, this was as close as it seemed so far that he wasn't going to get it done. Yes, Chase Sexton really challenged Jett in the second moto at the opener, but he was 10 seconds down in the moto. And I was ready to throw in the towel on this streak, because it didn't seem like he had much charge left in him. He didn't look like he was making inroads to closing this gap down, nor did he look like he had any aggression to try. And maybe that's where it gets so deceiving with Jett, is the difference between him trying his hardest and him cruising around is so minimal visually. But yeah, to his credit, he figured things out. He mentioned that he was struggling with the bike and they had made changes that weren't necessarily a positive change. But man, once he sorted that out and figured out how to ride his motorcycle, which it would take me a very long time to explain to you how difficult that is, to figure out a motorcycle, a change, and then adapt to it and apply those changes in your riding, not only just to get around the racetrack, but be the best racer on the track and close down a 10-second deficit to a world-class racer like Ken Roczen. That's something that's just not very common in this world. So more respect was earned by Jett, and it still lends to the question of where is this kid's ceiling? Because every time he's challenged and someone ups the ask, he finds an answer to it.
Yeah, and then even further, it's long-term thinking and short-term, because he's not taking these huge risks that could undo a phenom like this. We've seen it plenty of times before. Someone has the ceiling and then the injuries get to them. He's doing so many things to prevent. There's only so much you can do in racing, but prevent that from happening. Real quick, we want to give you these updated SuperMotocross point standings, combining Supercross and Motocross together. Well, he's done it. Cooper Webb, his strategy has paid off. He's now into sole possession at the top of the board. He was tied with Sexton going into High Point. Another top 5 result. I'm sure he'd like to be on the podium, but look, now he's got a big gap over Sexton and everyone else. And you know, JT, that's got to be Webb's goal. Have the 25 points going into the playoffs, be the #1 seed, and it's working out brilliantly.
Yeah, and speaking with him on the podium after the second moto, he was pretty disappointed in his day. I think frustrated with himself, and he just I don't think he could sort the track or the bike out. And I was like, okay, we need to talk about something positive here, because there's too much negativity to be on camera and in front of these fans who are just really, really enthusiastic right now. So I'm like, hey, you took over the SuperMotocross World Championship point standings. Like, that is a part of why you're here. So if you're looking for silver lining, look at this points lead you have now. You could see, like, that did affect him. Like, it is a big part of his motivation, and he wants to go into September with the points lead and be the guy to beat. And he's accomplishing that. He took over the lead this week.
Jett Lawrence is now up to, 12th overall in the 450 class, despite not even racing Supercross. But the point is, he's 251 points behind Webb. He's probably not going to be able to catch him. Webb should have an advantage if he can keep holding this all the way to the end. All right, those are our hot topics in the sport. Okay, fans, Pro Motocross season is now here. I'm excited about that, but if you know me, I'm more excited about deals and discounts, and I've got one to announce for you. International fans of Supercross and Motocross, the Super Motocross season, are now available for half off the original price on the Super Motocross Video Pass. That's right, 50% discount for all our international fans to watch the Pro Motocross season and the inaugural playoff rounds of the Super Motocross World Championship. So, go to supermotocross.tv to purchase access to the exciting conclusion of this 2023 season. You get all our live races, our weekly show right here, SMX Insider, and over 800 plus hours of archived races. Time for Fowler's Facts. Let's bring in our statistician, the king of the calculator, Clinton Fowler. Here's the math that I'm interested in. Hunter Lawrence does it the same way every time. He's going 3-1, 3-1, 2-1, 3-1 to win these overalls. So give me some data. Show me how he's doing this in the identical fashion every weekend.
Absolutely, Weege. He's winning those second motos with starts. It's entirely his starts. It's amazing. If you look at his first motos, he's got starts averaging 10th. First lap, he's averaging 9th, and he's finishing 3rd. On the second motos, he's starting in 5th. He's around the first lap in 3rd, and he's won all 4 of them. So those starts in the second moto have just been on point. It's been his strength. In the one time where it wasn't, this past weekend, second moto, he's 12th on the start. He goes and he sets 5 of the 7 fastest laps in the race. So he just had the speed. So JT, for me, I look at this and it's like, how is it that he's showing up so well on the start in the second moto?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. And I think we should mention this weekend, he had a really good start in the first moto and got caught up in Joe Shimoda's crash. So it got skewed a little bit because he would have been top 5 in that first moto, and maybe the results are different because of that. But when I look at him coming off the track after the first moto, moments where he does, the camera's not on him, he thinks it's a quiet moment, and it is. He's very sure of himself. There's no panic after the first moto. There's no real sense of urgency, like, hey, we got to get this together. There's none of that. It is the picture of calm. I think he believes in himself. I think he has matured over the last year to 18 months. We saw a lot of evidence of that in Monster Energy Supercross this year. And most importantly, I think he believes he is the best guy. And usually, over a long enough period, the best guy is going to win out. So when he goes into those second motos, I think he believes in the law of averages and the best guy is going to show up and win the race. And for the last few weeks, that's exactly what's been happening.
Well, the law of averages should show that these other guys every week who go into the race thinking I'm fast enough to win, eventually it should work out for them. But the same way it keeps working for Hunter, it keeps not working for others who have the speed. And Clinton, I know you're thinking it's RJ Hampshire and Joe Shimoda. They led off the start of the very first moto of the year, and I'm thinking like it could be these two guys. And here we are after round 4, still hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, both those guys amazing on that first moto in Palo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not been great for him since. RJ is averaging 14th on the starts all season. Joe Shimoda averaging 9th on the starts. So they're simply not putting themselves in the position to go battle. You can look at both of them in high point and you can see they both had struggles. To JT's point, they both had struggles in that second turn, first and second turn. So their averages on those starts just not there. JT, I just don't get it. Like, their factory riders are on factory equipment, and the consistency there, if they could get those starts, they could win, but they're not.
Yeah, and part of that is the depth in the 250 class. There are almost too many 250 factory riders. So all of these guys are lined up next to each other in a row, and it's just a battle amongst really strong motorcycles with a lot of talent on board, and someone's going to win out and someone's going to lose. And one of the things I've seen riders do in the past, Justin Cooper has done this over the course of his career, is if he looks at the lineup and he's like, man, I don't want to have to deal with all these elbows and handlebars exiting right off these gates, which in most cases determines whether you get a good start or a bad start. He'll just go off by himself and he'll start 10 gates away from that whole factory pack, and he'll trust himself and his process to get to the first turn first, or at least with that first group. So I think for Shimoda and Hampshire and Swole, it's been more of crashes in the first and second corner. But if you're a guy like Levi Kitchen, who's had a really tough time getting to that corner, that's what I would recommend. Go out, deal with inferior riders on inferior equipment, right? You have to believe in yourself that you can beat these privateer guys to the first corner, and you're going to avoid all of that factory equipment that we're talking about. You're going to have such a better chance at getting to the first turn with that first group if all of the group around you is on less equipment. That's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and it also keeps you out of trouble. Remember that huge wreck that both Shimoda and Hampshire were part of at Thunder Valley? That started from dudes bashing each other 5-10 riders away, and then they eventually got caught. They were close enough to still get caught in that, because it's always chaos, especially in the 250 class. I want to switch to 450s here, and you got some data here. Renaissance ride, at least for a lap, from Adam Cianciarulo. That was really fun to watch in Moto 2, battling for the lead. What did you see there, Clinton?
Yeah, the thing that triggered me to go take a peek at this is you heard AC on the podium. He said, I had a lot of pace in the beginning. That means more to me than the result. I'm still here. So I dove into that second moto. He had the lap times. He was on it. He had 2 of the 4 fastest laps in that entire second moto. He had 5 of the fastest 20 laps. Incredible speed. It's really the first time all year in a moto where I've seen his lap time show up there. So for me, Weege, it kind of feels like we saw a little bit of, say, the Adam Cianciarulo from 2020 when he was battling with Zach Osborne for that title.
Yeah, or 21 when he won a moto at High Point. That was the last moto win that he had. But as awesome as that was, man, you showed me a chart earlier today. The management, and JT and I already talked about this on the show, the management of Jett Lawrence struggling in that moto, taking a few laps off to learn the bike, and then turning it up. These are not normal ways to win motos. That was wild to see.
Yeah, I mean, he, in the 11th lap, he set a lap time. You won't see it on most of the charts just because it's later in the race, but he had a few slow laps. It was clear that he was trying to find that setting, but then all of a sudden he just uncorked. In that one lap, it was a 2:36 when everybody else was really running 2:38s and 2:39s. It was a phenomenal lap, and it shows a little bit of his maturity. It also shows what we've talked about before, a little bit of that potential. So yeah, impressive second moto from Jett Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely, which leads to 8-0. That's easy math right there. Okay, that's it for Fowler's Facts. We'll get you back. Get ready for Redbud.
Thanks, Weege. Thanks, JT.
Okay, time to wrap this show up quickly because we actually get a weekend off. There will not be a race this upcoming weekend. We'll be back for Redbud on July 1st. If you want to watch that, Race Day Live, presented by motorsport.com, as always, at 10 o'clock local time. That's East when we're at Redbud, and then the motos at 1 o'clock Eastern. And you can watch it on Peacock or outside the U.S. on the SuperMotocross Video Pass, or just come to Redbud, JT, because there's nothing quite like being there in person.
Yeah, it's just past 4th of July, or just before 4th of July, and everybody would say it's America's National. Everybody loves a good weekend off, don't get me wrong, but if you're not excited for Redbud, you might not be a motocross fan, so hopefully we'll see you all there.
So remember, it's July 1st for our next race, but we will be back with this show next week as we break down some of the point standings totals and how it might affect the Super Motocross World Championship playoffs. So stay tuned to this channel for that next week, and then we'll see you at Redbud July 1st. Thanks for watching.